me today. Today we're going to be exploring conflict management in the workplace. Before we begin, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay my respects to elders past and present. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have been the caretakers of this land for thousands of years, and we honour their knowledge and contributions. I'm calling you today from the land of the Darug people. So welcome everybody. Today's session will focus on managing workplace conflicts effectively. Now, conflict is a natural part of any organisation, but how we handle it makes all the difference. By the end of this session, you'll have practical techniques to manage conflicts professionally and constructively. So here's a quick overview of what we're going to be covering today. You'll be learning about how to understand why conflicts occur and its impact. You'll learn different conflict resolution strategies, gain skills to manage workplace disputes professionally, and learn how to apply a structured process to resolving conflicts. I also have a bit of an agenda there for you as well, but why don't we get started? Can either of you perhaps think of a time when you experienced or observed workplace conflict? What was the impact to the people that were involved?
I'll go first.
Yeah.
At my previous job, there was a conflict between two team members over task ownership. One person felt like they were doing all the work while the other felt micromanaged. And then that led to resentment, poor communication, and missed deadlines. Then eventually HR had to step in and mediate the situation, which helped clarify roles and expectations.
Great. So definitely a resolution is an outcome that we want to achieve from conflict management, because unresolved conflict can lead to poor communication and productivity loss. So we will explore strategies to prevent this. Now, conflict is a normal part of any workplace. But if it is not managed properly, it can have negative impact on individuals and teams. So today we're going to look at why conflict happens, how it affects the workplace, and why managing it properly is essential. So let's start with a simple definition. Conflict happens when there is a disagreement between individuals or teams due to different needs, values, expectations, or priorities. It can be as small as a misunderstanding over an email or as large as an ongoing dispute about roles and responsibilities. There are 5 common causes of workplace conflict. The first is miscommunication. So sometimes what we say and what others hear are 2 different things. A poorly worded email or a lack of clarity in instructions can easily create tension. Next, you can see on the screen is unmet expectations. When an employee expects something to happen, such as receiving recognition for hard work, and it doesn't happen, it can build frustration. Another major factor is competing priorities. This happens when different teams or individuals have goals that do not align. So for an example, an IT team focusing on security measures might conflict with a sales team that wants easy access to customer data. Personality clashes are also very common. We all have different working styles, and sometimes those differences create friction. Maybe one person prefers to work independently, while another prefers collaboration, which can lead to misunderstandings. And finally, a lack of role clarity can lead to conflict. When employees do not fully understand their job responsibilities, there can be overlap, confusion, and frustration. If 2 employees believe they are responsible for the same task, conflict is almost inevitable. So let's consider the impact when conflict is left unresolved. Firstly, it can lead to increased stress and tension. Employees who feel constant at odds with colleagues may experience frustration, anxiety, and even burnout. Secondly, unresolved conflicts reduces productivity. If employees are distracted by workplace disputes, they are less focused on their work, leading to missed deadlines and lower efficiency. Third, morale and engagement suffer. Employees who experience ongoing workplace tension may withdraw from teamwork and communication, affecting the overall culture of a workplace. And lastly, employee turnover increases. if people feel their concerns are not being addressed or that they're working in a toxic environment, they can leave for another job. And this leads to higher recruitment costs for the organisation. But conflict is not always bad. When managed correctly, it can actually lead to better decision making and innovation. By addressing issues openly and honestly, teams can find better ways to work together. So before we move on, let's take a moment to reflect on a real life example. Ryan, could you think about your own experiences in the workplace? Have you ever been in a workplace where unresolved conflict negatively impacted team performance? What happened?
Yes, absolutely. In my previous role, we actually had two employees that had ongoing tension because one person often submitted reports late. That ultimately impacted the other's ability to meet the deadline. So instead of actually addressing it directly, they avoided each other and their resentment actually grew. Eventually, management stepped in and they had to work through their issues in a formal meeting. It was awkward at first, but in the end, they developed a better workflow.
Well, that's an excellent outcome and a very common example. So thank you for sharing that with me, Ryan. So now that we understand why conflict happens, let's explore the different approaches to handling it. There are 5 primary approaches to managing conflict, and each is suited to different situations. So first, we have the competing approach. This is when someone insists on getting their way, even at the expense of others. It can be useful in urgent situations or when enforcing policies, but overuse can damage relationships and trust. Next is accommodating. This is the opposite of competing. Here, someone prioritizes the needs of others over their own. It can help maintain relationships, but may lead to resentment if used too often. Another is avoiding. This happens when someone refuses to engage with a conflict, either by postponing it or ignoring it altogether. While this might help in situations where emotions are running high, avoiding conflicts long-term can create big issues. Collaborating is often seen as the most effective method. It involves working together to find a mutually beneficial solution. However, collaboration takes time and effort, so it's not always practical for every situation. And lastly, we have compromising. This involves both parties giving up something to reach a middle ground. It can be useful when a quick resolution is needed, but neither side gets everything they want. So let's explore these approaches further by applying them to some real-world scenarios. I want you to consider this scenario. 2 employees have an argument about who should be responsible for a specific task, which delays the project. What type of approach would you suggest in this situation?
I guess it would be compromising.
Yes, Sophie, that's a great idea. So both employees need to complete the project, right? So a compromise is where responsibilities are fairly divided and will allow the task to move forward without any necessary conflict. So great job. A manager, let's have a look at scenario 2. A manager is implementing a new policy that an employee strongly disagrees with, but the policy is legally required. What type of approach should we use here?
I'd say it'd probably be accommodating and collaborating.
Yep. There's some great ideas. So if the policy must be implemented, the manager may accommodate the employee's concerns where possible, making minor adjustments potentially. But if the employee's feedback is valuable, the manager may collaborate to find a solution that meets compliance regulations while addressing concerns. But if the issues are really about things that are legally required and that we can't be accommodating or compromising there, it might just be that the decision has to be made and no compromising can be enforced. So a team member consistently interrupts meetings with negative comments, disrupting the team dynamic. What should we do here?
I think maybe at first probably avoiding initially, but then if they do that continuously, then like collaborating.
Yep, that's a great idea. So if their interruptions are super minor and they don't really impact productivity significantly, avoiding might be the best short-term option. But if this issue persists, a collaboration approach might be better with the team member to understand their concerns and set clear expectations. That would be a better longer-term solution. Well done. Now, a structured approach to conflict resolution ensures fairness and clarity when dealing with disputes. Without a process, emotions and assumptions can take over, leading to unresolved issues or further misunderstandings. So let's go through the 5 key steps of effective conflict resolution. Step 1 is identifying the issue. Before jumping into the solution, we need to fully understand the root cause of the conflict. The steps requires asking the right questions. So what exactly is the disagreement about? Who is involved? When did it start? What triggered it? How has it affected the workplace, team, or productivity? By defining the issue clearly, we prevent miscommunication and ensure that we are solving the actual problem, not just the symptom. So for example, imagine 2 employees. Alex and Jordan are frustrated because they believe they are each doing more work than the other. If we don't take time to identify the issue, we might assume it's about workload, but after asking questions, we might find that the real issue is a lack of clear role definitions and communications. Step 2, listen actively. One of the most overlooked steps in conflict resolution is listening. So too often people enter a conversation already focused on how they will respond rather than truly understanding the other person's perspective. So active listening means allowing the other person to speak without interruption, paraphrasing their concerns to confirm understanding. So for example, you could say something like, so what I'm hearing is that you feel left out of key messages. Is that correct? After clarifying questions to uncover deeper concerns, and controlling emotional reactions and avoiding defensiveness. So remember, when someone feels heard, they are more likely to engage in a productive resolution process. Step 3 is finding common ground. Once both parties have expressed their perspectives, the next step is to identify shared interests. Even in workplace disputes, people typically have some mutual goals. So for example, 2 colleagues are arguing about a project timeline. They might both share the goal of delivering high quality work. And a manager and employee disagree on performance expectations, likely both want to improve efficiency and meet targets. So by shifting the focus from opposition to collaboration, we reduce hostility and start moving towards a resolution. So you could say things like, you know, I think that we have some opposing views here, but we can agree on this point. We both want to reach this goal. How does that sound? Step 4 is developing solutions. Now that this issue is clear and the common ground has been identified, the next step is brainstorming solutions. So the best solutions are ones where people feel like they're both contributing to the solution. So what you could do is encourage both parties to contribute ideas, explore different options and compromises, assess which solution ideal aligns with the company policies and business needs, and ensure solutions are realistic, practical, and mutually beneficial. So it's important to avoid imposing a solution without a discussion. When both sides have input, they are more likely to commit to the outcome. Step 5 is implementation and follow-up. So conflict resolution doesn't end when an agreement is reached. The final step is ensuring that the resolution is implemented effectively and remains sustainable. So this involves clearly defining what each party has agreed to do, setting expectations for follow-up meetings and check-ins, addressing any ongoing concerns or roadblocks, and documenting the resolution when necessary. Without follow-up, old conflicts can resurface, and this step ensures accountability and long-term effectiveness. So a scenario for this one, you could imagine 2 employees, let's call them Maya and Ben. They have ongoing tension because Maya frequently misses deadlines, which affects Ben's ability to complete his part of the project. Ben believes Maya is disorganized while Maya feels overwhelmed by unrealistic expectations. How could we solve this one? So we are going to try and do a little bit of problem solving here, going through each of the steps. So the first thing we would need to do for this scenario is ask, what are the questions? What are the questions we could ask in this situation about this conflict? Do we have any ideas?
Yeah, we can ask a question like, is Maya aware of how her delays affect Ben's work?
Yep, great one. Sophie, do you have any ideas?
Does Ben maybe understand Maya's workload and challenges?
Yep, great. Anything else?
And maybe are the expectations clear from both sides?
Yeah, great. There's some fantastic questions that we could ask both people involved in this conflict. Now, the next step is active listening. So how could we paraphrase their situation? Would either of you like to have a go at that?
Yeah. Let me have a look. Maya, it sounds like maybe you're feeling overwhelmed due to competing priorities. And Ben seems like you're frustrated because delayed tasks impact your ability to complete your work. Is that right?
Yeah, great ideas there, Sophie. Love it. So what common ground do we think that they could have if we explore step 3? What's the common ground that they're likely to share?
Well, it kind of looks like they both want to complete projects successfully.
Yep.
Yep. Seems like both of them want less stress and maybe some clearer communication.
That's right. And Ryan, anything to add?
I think they probably both value teamwork and efficiency.
Yeah, great. There's some fantastic ideas, and I think they're going to find more things in common by going through this process. Now, ideally, we would want Maya and Ben to come up with solutions, but perhaps we could come up with some ideas ourselves. What are some solutions that could help this situation?
Possibly better workload management. So Maya and Ben could review upcoming deadlines together and then prioritize tasks.
Yeah, great. That's a good idea.
I think they could have some clearer expectations. The manager could set some deadlines with some buffer time for unexpected delays.
Yep, great idea. So getting some involvement from management to set those expectations, that's a great idea. What else could we do?
Could do check-ins, so weekly, like short check-ins, like 5-10 minute check-ins to ensure transparency on progress and challenges.
Great idea. Do you have one more?
Yeah, I think potentially they could look at some workload balancing. If Maya is overloaded, tasks might be able to be reassigned or timelines could be adjusted.
Yep, great idea. There's some great solutions that they could work on together. So if we have a look at the final step, step 5, what could we do to implement and follow up? If those were the solutions that we proposed.
The manager could document the agreed upon action plans.
Yep, great idea.
I think maybe Maya and Ben could commit to some weekly progress check-ins.
Great idea.
The team could also monitor whether deadlines improve over the next few weeks or month.
Yep, great.
And maybe your follow-up meeting is scheduled in 3 weeks to like reassess the situation.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea to check in that it really has been resolved and there's no ongoing problems. Great idea, both of you. So if we move on now to handling difficult conversations. Now, this is pretty challenging. Handling difficult conversations is an essential skill in conflict management, and a poorly handled conversation can escalate tensions. So we've talked about a few solutions and ideas about how to move it forward, but it doesn't always go so smoothly. So there are some key principles to help you when you're in these situations. Stay calm and composed. If emotions run high, take a deep breath and focus on the facts. Use I statements. Instead of saying, you never communicate deadlines, try, I feel frustrated when I don't know the deadlines in advance, because this will reduce the likelihood of defensiveness from the other person. Focus on solutions and not blame. Shift from you messed up to how can we ensure this doesn't happen again? Listen actively. Summarize the other person's point to confirm their understanding, and it shows that you are listening to them and they feel understood. And importantly, show empathy. Acknowledge their perspective before presenting your own. Now, let's talk about what not to do. The don'ts in handling difficult conversations. Avoid personal attacks. You should keep the discussion professional and avoid phrases like, you're always difficult to work with. Don't assume intent. Instead of assuming someone is being difficult on purpose, ask for some clarification. Do not raise your voice. This escalates conflict rather than resolving it. I've received some great advice to say if you get quieter and if you get lower, it requires them to listen more intently. Do not ignore the issue. Sweeping things under the rug only leads to bigger problems later. So let's put this to practice. Let's have a look at a little bit of a role-playing scenario. So imagine this. A manager needs to address an employee about frequent lateness to work. Now, the conversation should be constructive and it should use the do's from the other side of the slide. And we want to also incorporate some of the ideas that we had discussed on the previous slide. So why don't we have a look at one of you being the manager? So you need to address the issue of the employee being late without making them defensive, and we'll need another person to be the employee who is frequently arriving late, but they might have some personal challenges at the moment that are affecting their punctuality. So Ryan, Sophie, would you like to have a go at this role play?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Great.
I'll take on the role of the manager in this situation.
So I guess I'm the one problem.
Yeah. So yeah, hi Sophie. Look, thanks for taking the time to chat with me today. I actually wanted to just check in with you about something I've noticed recently. I've observed that you've been arriving late to work quite a few times over the past few weeks, and I just wanted to check in and understand if there's anything going on for you and how I can support you.
Yeah, I know I've been having trouble in the mornings because of school drop-offs for my younger brother. My parents' work schedules changed and I have to take him now.
Okay. Yeah, look, I appreciate you sharing that with me, and I can completely understand that family responsibilities can really make things tricky sometimes. I also just want to make sure that we're balancing that with the needs of the team and the business. When you're late, it can sometimes disrupt meetings and project timelines.
Yeah, I understand that and I'm really sorry. I don't mean to let the team down. I've been trying to get here on time, but sometimes in the mornings, some mornings are harder than others.
Oh, yeah, look, 100%. I get that. I know you're committed to your work and I appreciate your honesty. Let's try and figure out a solution that works both for you and the team. have you considered to shifting your start time slightly, or working, working remotely for the first part of the morning, maybe?
Yeah, if I could implement those things, that would actually help a lot. If I could start, say, 30 minutes later and then make up the time at the end of the day, it would be much easier for me to manage.
Okay, great. Look, it sounds like a good solution. I'll just check in with HR to make sure that we can adjust your hours officially. And in the meantime, let's set up a plan for some clearer communication. If something unexpected comes across and you just need to send me a quick message so we can plan accordingly, I'm open to that. Does that sound like a good idea to you?
Yes, that sounds great. Thank you for being so understanding.
Of course. I always appreciate your hard work and value in our team, so I want to make sure you feel supported. But let's check in a couple of weeks and see how this arrangement is working for both of us.
Thank you.
Great work on the role play, guys. Ryan, I saw you maintain a professional and supportive tone, which was lovely, and that helped Sophie feel comfortable, I think, discussing her challenges. You used your active listening and problem-solving skills to reach a mutual beneficial solution, which is lovely to see. And Sophie, you responded really well as well. You acknowledged that there was an issue and you engaged really constructively in that discussion. I can see that both of you engaged in that role play, that you demonstrated the importance of empathy, understanding those family commitments. You were clear with your communication, and you worked together to come up with a solution. You were collaborative in that sense. So well done. One area for improvement could be ensuring that any workplace adjustment aligns with organizational policies. So I think that was great, Ryan, that you said you wanted to double check with HR, because we just need to check that before we can move forward. So good job there. Overall, a really good demonstration of conflict resolution in action. So well done. So let's move on to the final slide where we'll wrap up the key points and address any final questions. So we have now covered the essential aspects of workplace conflict resolution, including why conflicts arise, different resolution approaches, and a structured process for managing conflicts effectively. So remember, the goal is not to avoid conflict, but to address it in a way that strengthens professional relationships and workplace culture. So as a quick recap, today we discussed the common causes and impacts of workplace conflict, the 5 conflict resolution approaches in avoiding, accommodating, competing, compromising, and collaborating, the structured 5-step conflict resolution process, and we had a go at handling difficult conversations effectively. So I'm just going to take a moment to open the floor for any questions. You could also share any insights or takeaways you've had from today's session. Does anybody feel like they have some questions or experiences they'd like to discuss today?
I do.
Yes, Sophie.
I realized today from your presentation that I often accommodate sometimes too much in conflicts. So today's session helped me see that while it's good to be cooperative, I need to assert myself a little bit more when my needs are also important. So I'll try to balance compromising and collaborating more in my work relationships.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing, Sophie. Thank you for all your engagement today. Conflict is part of every workplace, but applying these techniques can help you, and you can turn challenges into opportunities for growth. So I encourage you to practice what you've discussed and use the structured conflict resolution approach when facing workplace disagreements. And if you ever need support, don't hesitate to reach out to HR or your leadership team. So thanks again, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
See you.